Como foi desenvolvido esse treinamento?
How was developed the training,
Okay.
the consultory DTS?
In 2018, the International DTS Center came to our Frontier Missions meetings in Palawan, Philippines, and they asked us to be joining them in a partnership. They were involved in something that maybe many of us are familiar with called the DTS Reframe. And they wanted us to be a part of the Reframe because they had an understanding from the Lord that they needed to really think about the oral audience in the world. Oral people make up 75 to 80% of those people who have not heard the gospel. That means they don't have a written language, and the only way that they're going to hear the gospel is to literally to hear the gospel. So they asked us to partner with them. YWAM Frontier Missions, the International DTS Center, and the University of the Nations. So we began a partnership, but they said they had some 4 important points that they wanted us to consider as we created the new tool, the new vehicle for the DTS curriculum. And they said we want the story, the curriculum, to be chronological. We have a problem with our DTS students. This generation of students coming into the DTS have not written the Bible. They've not read the Bible. They ask classes, how many of you have read a whole chapter of the Bible? And they say maybe 4 or 5 out of 30 have read 1 chapter from the Bible. So they're seeing that there's no Bible knowledge in the DTS students. They've said we must have a chronological curriculum that has an overview of the Bible, so the students, when they get out of the DTS, they're able to understand an overview of the Bible and how to use the Bible in their own discipleship. They also said we would like this curriculum to be oral, because we're finding that we have, like I said previously, 75% of the lost are UPGs, unreached people groups, are oral. They don't have a written language. But we're also finding out that this new apostolic generation of young people are what we call post-literate. That means they read, but they really don't prefer to read to get their information. They want to talk to each other. They want to partner with eldership and those who are wiser than them. But one of the important values they have is they want to be heard as a part of the discussion. They don't want to be told, do this, do that. They want to say, let's talk together. Let's discover what God is saying. And we don't mind to learn new things, but we really want to be a part of the discovery of those new things. So we found out that the people that are oral from necessity, and they're people that are oral out of preference. And so this actually means if we want to reach oral people, maybe it's good to train orally, because we're going to train the same way that we give. Certainly if you have a lecture and you get a lot of information, and then you meet someone who needs that information, you have to decide, how am I going to give that information to them? I have all this knowledge from the lecture, and I need to give it to this person who needs it. And they have to think, maybe with a better word, translate what they've heard for that person. But in the oral world, we learn it through a Bible story narrative. We discuss that story. We find how to internalize that story. We find out how we can apply that story. And literally, when you find someone who needs that truth, you can give it to them the exact same way that you received it. So, so we began to create the curriculum that they had 2 other things they wanted us for it to be. They wanted it to be reproducible. That means that someone else could do it very soon after they've learned from you. They can actually do the same thing that you've done. So reproducibility is very important in discipleship, because you want someone to be able to do what you do. And if you're making a church and you want that church to make another church, they have to be able to do what you do. So reproducibility is very important. And the other 4th factor that they wanted us to consider as very important when in creating the new curriculum was we want disciples who are able to disciple. we're discovering in our DTSs that people hear the truth, they internalize the truth, and they apply the truth to their own lives. But when it comes to them helping someone else do that, they don't feel quite adequate to that task, and they have, so the DTS said, we do that now, but we want to do that better. So we started making the curriculum, and we decided to put the curriculum in what is called a simple church format. That means it's just like you are having church in your home. The whole classroom is like you have church in your home. And that means that we have 3 simple things we do in what we call simple church or 3/3 church. And that means we say we look back. That means when you come together, you're looking back at your lives. You're looking back at how God has moved, and you're worshiping. You're looking back and sharing with one another what's happened in your lives, fellowship. Then we're looking back at what we call friendly accountability. And that means when we've found out that there's an application for us, for me personally, or for us as a group, we want to talk together about how we're doing. And if we're struggling, we support each other. If we're doing well, we rejoice with each other. This is called the look back part of Simple Church, and this is exactly what happens in the classroom. The next portion is look up, and that's where we're looking to God for more information about who He is so we can be like Him. In the God Story DTS, this look up portion is a Bible story narrative. We have 24 Bible story narratives and 12 DBSs. Now, if you're not familiar with DBS, that's a Discovery Bible Study. It's a portion of Scripture, and we treat it exactly the same way we do a narrative, only it's a portion of Scripture instead of a story. When we teach a story, we tell the story. We teach our audience to retell the story, because an oral person cannot discuss with you the truth of the story until they know the story. Oral people are holistic. So for them to discuss the truth in the story, they have to know the story. So we teach them, they retell it. We work very hard at that. It's a little bit difficult, but it has a high value, so we take the difficulty. We teach people how to all tell the story. Then we discuss the story. We have simple questions when we discuss the story. What sticks out to you in this story? Is there anything confusing in this story? What do you learn about people from this story? What do you learn about God from this story? And we have a whole discussion of the story. Now you may ask the question, how do you cover all the curriculum, all the required concepts in the DTS? Now there's a document in the DTS reframe that has all the concepts that need to be covered in a DTS. And that is 6 major concepts, and all those concepts have about 15 or 20 subpoints. In our stories, in the Discovery Bible Studies, all those points and subpoints are in the stories. And the staff are responsible to tell the story and lead the discussion in such a way that all the concepts are covered. After we told the story, we teach the students another spiritual discipline, and that is called application. And we look at how to make a good application from the story. So we teach them that skill of making an application. And then so that works back to the next day in friendly accountability. We're helping each other with the application. But what's a little bit different about this DTS, there are many things that are quite different. The paradigm is quite different from lecture to story, the responsibility turning from the lecturer to the staff. Those are quite different. But this is also different. We ask the question, who needs to hear what I just heard? And we make a list of believers we know and unbelievers we know. And every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, the students go in the afternoon or the evening and tell a believer and an unbeliever the story that they heard that day. And when they go back to several places, a lot of times more people gather, and they end up having a secret group. And then they end up bringing more parts of the morning into their experience outside the classroom. So what happens is a church can be planted right there in the beginning of the classroom phase of a DTS. In fact, in Malawi, our DTS students in the God Story DTS planted 2 churches among the Yao people, a Muslim people group, during the classroom phase of their DTS. So there's a lot that could be said about the paradigm changes in the DTS, because it is quite different than the classic DTS, which we know as 12 lecturers coming in from the outside, and this one being very much the responsibility lies with the staff to disciple the students, and the students disciple those who are unsaved. Ask me another question. I can ramble on and on. Oh, can I talk